Welcome to the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show on the Grizzly Truth Sports Network. I am your host for Indiana Basketball Weekly, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I would like to welcome in my co-host, live from Bankers Life Arena, or Fieldhouse, Kent Sterling. How you doing,
Yeah,
Kent?
you know what? I guess I'm doing better than if Indiana had lost. But what a game! My God, Indiana has got to figure itself out in a hurry, or they're going to lose a bunch of games in Big Ten play.
I don't know. I you're still, you don't have a full strength Rob Fennessy. And the thing that struck me here, and I think I brought it up on the show yesterday, that Armand Franklin would make a big difference in this
Yep,
game, and he
yep.
did. And the way I look at it is, they played what I think is probably between the 7th and the 10th best team in the Big Ten. They barely won the game, but once again, at the end of the game, they overcame it, and that's something we haven't seen in past years.
That's true. But holy moly, those 12 turnovers. If you had asked me after the game how many turnovers there were, I would have said 20 or 22, just based on the quality of the turnovers. Terrible turnovers. And then the way they went about their business, this was both good and bad. In the way they attacked Notre Dame's just really, really soft 2-3 zone. They had some possessions where they were perfect and they did exactly the right thing, getting the ball in the middle and then feeding it to the short post. And all of a sudden, Joey Brunk looks like he's going to have a double-double in the first half. Trace is scoring buckets. And then all of a sudden you see possessions where, like Justin Smith, early in the shot clock, dribbles against it, tries to penetrate, throws up a terrible shot. And you see that they just don't value every possession at the level they're going to have to win a lot of games in the Big Ten. They're capable of winning a lot of games in the Big Ten, but if they play indifferent basketball like they did, not just in the second half when Notre Dame went on its run, but in the first half when they should have scored virtually every possession about that soft-ass 2-3 or against that soft-ass 2-3, man, that drives you nuts.
Yeah, and it seems like they go from cutting, moving the ball with the purpose to score, to basically just throwing the ball around the perimeter, hoping somebody gets open.
I don't understand all the high ball screens, to tell you the truth, against a 2-3 zone. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If you put guys where there aren't defenders and you move the ball quickly, you're going to create floor imbalance defensively, and you're going to get open shots. And Indiana just seems to be insistent about complicating basketball in a way that it just doesn't need to be. Attacking a 2-3 is the easiest thing in the history of basketball. You go 3 out, and you rotate the guys from the high to the low post, and let's go. Pop, 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 quick passes, no dribbles, and let's move the ball and create an easy look. And they did that from time to time, and it was beautiful. But then at other times, really, really tough. When Notre Dame, when they went away from that zone into the man, that game completely changed, and all of a sudden the momentum swung in the direction of Notre Dame, and Indiana just luckier than hell to find its way to a win today when it so easily could have been a loss. And by the way, not to jump ahead, but what the hell is Indiana doing inbounding the basketball at the end to Justin Smith,
Yeah.
a guy who's never hit 70% from the foul line in his 3 seasons at Indiana? Who's in charge of that?
Well, it was definitely somebody that didn't know that I was given 2.5 points in this game, Kent. I mean, it's like it's a huge win, but I lose by
That
a half a
hurts.
point. It's a killer. And yeah, I mean, to me, don't you set screens and get the ball to a Rob Fennessy or a Devontae Green? Or even Trace
Right.
Jackson Davis, if nothing else.
Anybody who can shoot foul shots better than Justin Smith, I don't even know what the hell he was doing on the floor. Why would you have him in the game? For what purpose? You've got
no
a
clue.
timeout. I didn't understand the whole thing.
Yeah, and I still would rather get it to Fennessy, even though I know he played not very well. He missed every shot he took today. But still, I think a guy like Fennessy or Trace Jackson Davis, at the end of the game, with the game on the line, they're going to make the free throws.
Yeah, and I know, I sound like some kind of a nut week after week. I mean, we talk about how poorly Indiana looks, and they're 11-1. So, I mean, what the hell? I guess you'd rather, we say it every show, but you'd rather learn while winning than learn because you lost. But at some point, this crap's got to get cleaned up, because this is just like, we understand as Indiana basketball fans how you need to play in the Big Ten. I think that we understand it better than the players understand it, because again and again and again, they show an indifference to the ball. And defensively, I thought defensively today, actually, they were pretty good.
Yeah.
Until late in the second half, when they let the Goodwin kid kind of get off a little bit. But other than that, I thought defensively they were all right.
Well, a kid like Goodwin's going to get open every once in a while. I mean, because he's relentless in trying to get open. And defensively, to play a game where you give up 60 points, they only caused 9 turnovers. But the thing that impressed me was how Brunk and Trace Jackson-Davis did underneath the basket against Mooney, because Mooney's a really good player. And they held him to 5 for 13 shooting, 1 from 3 from three-point range. He had 10 rebounds. But Joey Brunk had 14 rebounds, Trace Jackson-Davis 7. And I think it's safe to say that 42-32 rebounding advantage had a huge deal on why Indiana won this game.
Yeah, this is Joey Brunk's best game as an Indiana player, for sure, and probably his best day as a collegian. He was built to play that game. I think Mooney is a really good matchup for him on the one end, and then on the other end, playing against a 2-3 zone, I think Joey knows what he's doing against a 2-3 zone and can create opportunities. He can go get rebounds, obviously, and he did that at a really high level in the first half. I thought he looked terrific, and Armaan Franklin was a revelation. I want Armaan Franklin playing 40 minutes. I don't want to see Devontae Green. That what this team invests in possession of the basketball with Devontae Green, despite the fact that he hit those two big shots that he created himself in the second half, man, this guy's going to kill you. And Justin Smith, I don't need to see it all. If I was Archie Miller, I'd say, Justin, why don't you just go to class? And we really don't need your ass on this team at all. I don't even need you on the bench. I'm so sick of watching this kid underachieve compared to what he's capable of. I can't stand it. He played a lot of minutes today, and he did virtually nothing. I mean, he played 35 minutes. Now, on the defensive end, he wasn't terrible. But with the basketball and away from the basketball, he is not capable, I think, psychologically of going to war at a level where he can win you games. And I thought his effort was just 2 of 10 from the field, but it's not even the misses that drive me nuts. It's the lack of effort and the lack of understanding that possession of the basketball is a really important thing in basketball.
Yeah, and see, I've had questions about Devontae for 2 years, and last year I caught a lot of crap from Colin Hartman, who used to do the show with us, and that other guy that used to play for Indiana, because I said that Devontae Green, IU would be better off without him. And I still think that's true to this day. But let me ask you this. We talked the other day about the difference between playing 11 or playing 7 or 8. Are we seeing the genesis of this becoming an 8-man rotation? Because you look at Deron Davis 1 minute, Thompson 4 minutes, Anderson 4 minutes. So really off the bench, you had Franklin and Fennessy, who each played 14 and 15, Hunter, who played 10. So do you think that maybe this is kind of being pared down for Big Ten time?
You know, I think so, and I think that Archie gives the kids a shot. You know, let's put Deron in there, and let's see maybe what he can do against this 2-3 and see if he matches up defensively. He plays a minute and picks up 2 quick fouls. Demezy didn't look comfortable, didn't look really good. Race Thompson on the offensive end doesn't really give you anything. So if you can get away with somebody who plays defense as well as Race, while a guy who can give you something on the offensive end, that's a pretty easy decision. And I like Race Thompson. I mean, he does what he's supposed to do, you know, but offensively he just doesn't give you anything. And hopefully they do get to a point where they get down to 8. But I'll tell you this too. I think that Notre Dame went zone because they wanted to save their bullets with that 7-man rotation until the second half, and that's what cost them the game. You know, that zone was terrible. And because of it, Indiana builds that 17-point lead, And then you gotta claw your way back into the game from down 17, and they just didn't have enough horses to get it done.
Yeah, because how many times do you see a team down 17 or 18, they come all the way back, get a quick lead, and then just kind of peter out, and the other team will pull back ahead. And that's kind of what I thought was going to happen here, but it took until that last shot by Armand Franklin. And my question is this. Last year we see Rob Fennessy in a game similar to this hit a game-winning shot.
Yeah.
Is there any difference between this game and that game and where this team sat last year? Because remember, this team at one point was, 12-2, something like that. Do you see any big difference between this year's team and where Indiana's at right now and last year's team and where they were at the same time?
I do see some difference. And that difference, where's Deron Davis just got off the elevator on the main concourse in the field house. He's walking right past me. I don't know what he's doing.
He should have grabbed him. We could have got him on, and he could have talked about his minute of play.
Deron, the team bus is that way. I think that they are similar. Although, here's one big difference, is that I think that if Trace Jackson Davis can stay healthy, then he's got an enormous advantage, and Indiana is going to be better for having Trace Jackson Davis than they were for having Romeo Langford. Romeo with the thumb and the ribs and all the problems that he had health-related. I think that that's a big difference for this team. I do think they're a little bit deeper than they were last year, and I think with Armand Franklin, you've got another guy who really needs to embody and hopefully does embody a culture that we continue to hope that Archie Miller is trying to build, some competitive toughness. Because that team today in the second half was not competitively tough. Notre Dame was the tougher team for the last 17 minutes of that game, and that just can't happen. And because when you get to Big Ten play, I love Mike Bray. Mike Bray's a really good dude and a terrific coach. But what the hell is Notre Dame doing in that zone? You're not going to have that kind of coaching in Big Ten play. Guys are going to man you up. They're going to extend their guards, and Indiana's going to have trouble functioning.
Yeah, and I think the best hope for that, of course, is a healthy Rob Fennessy, which I think would take care of a lot of things. But also, I see difference in this team between this year and last year just because of Trace Jackson Davis and Armand Franklin, because I think those are two guys that Trace Jackson Davis can take a game over. And last year, Jawan Morgan was a good player. Romeo was a good player. But, and I may be crazy for saying this, since one of them I think is in the NBA now, but Trace Jackson Davis is a guy that can put a team on his back and take him across the finish line, and that's what this team didn't have last year.
Yeah, he can kind of, and we saw it a little bit today where I thought even when Indiana wasn't playing well, he asserted his will a little bit. And found a way to get offensive looks. They didn't always fall. He was 7 of 9, so he missed a couple of buckets, and I think they were both in the second half. But he's a guy with unique athletic ability, and I think he has a unique IQ for the game. I think he brings a toughness to his play that we're seeing develop game after game after game. And I think you're right about Armand. I mean, nobody thought that he was going to, other than you, thought he was going to score 17 points in this game on just 6 shots. But what I liked especially was that the kid competed every single possession. And that's what you're going to see in the second game between Butler and Purdue. You're going to see two teams that will compete 5 guys at a time, all 40 minutes. And we haven't seen that from Indiana yet.
Well, how about this? This goes back to a conversation I had with Travis Steele, who's the Xavier coach. And we were talking about it because Xavier always has a tendency to have 10 minutes during a game where they'll let a team back in that they're kicking the crap out of. And I asked him, I said, is it any worrisome that they don't play 40 complete minutes? And he looked at me and he said, name me some teams that do. He said, every team has 5 to 10 minutes where, things don't go right. He said the difference is this. Teams that are really good in that 5 to 10 minute span will compete so hard that they're just playing poorly, and they will only give up 6 to 8 points on a big lead. He said a team that is not competitive enough, when they have that 5 or 10 minute span, they'll get outscored 20 to 4. And we just saw that.
Yep. And we've seen it again and again and again. We saw it against Nebraska. We saw it against UConn. And today we saw it against Notre Dame. The shots aren't always going to fall. You're going to get caught in defensive switches that just don't work. But you've got to compete. You've got to work hard every second you're on the floor. You cannot waste opportunities either to function well as a team and play as hard as you can, or you can't fumble away opportunities with the basketball. And we know this because we're a little bit older. The opportunities lost are really what you regret in life. And what these guys are doing, despite the fact that they're 11-1, they look like a team that is going to squander opportunities. And I guess that's how you become a guy in your 30s, 40s, or 50s who's sort of figured things out, is you piss stuff away when you're in your teens and 20s. I guess that's part of the process of learning. But I wish that Archie would kind of accelerate that process for these guys with some consequences and make them accountable for that lack of competitiveness and for those lost opportunities.
How about this, though? When I see the lack of competitiveness, the thing that strikes me is the fact that Devontae Green was in almost that entire time.
Yeah, right.
And
yep.
I think this, Joey Brunk played hard. Justin Smith, for the most part, played hard. Trace Jackson Davis played hard. Al Durham played hard. Armand Franklin played hard. Devontae Green played.
Yep, and that's the shame of the whole deal, isn't it? You've got, and you bring this up, and you're right too with Al Durham. Al Durham plays hard all the time. Now, offensively, he's going to take some crazy ass runners from, he's moving to his right 6 feet from the bucket, and he throws up kind of a half-assed hook shot high off the glass, and you think, what the hell's he doing? But at least he's playing hard. The shot is stupid and ill-conceived, and the result not positive, but at least he's doing something hard.
Yeah. And the thing is this, by doing that, it gives Trace Jackson Davis a chance to go get it and put it in.
Yep. Yeah, and Brunk did the same thing. And Brunk, for all of his, areas of want in basketball, and there are several, you know what? He will play hard all the time. He doesn't always get things to go his way. On the post, he plays a little bit shorter than what he is, and you'd rather not have that, but at least he goes after it and brings some fire to the guys. Hey, you saw that today. Even when he was on the bench, timeouts called, he runs onto the floor, he's slapping hands with guys, and he's bringing some oomph to a team that really needed it.
He's a leader.
And in the field house during that game in that second half, this place was a morgue. Like, there was no energy in this place, no energy from the Indiana team, no energy from the fans. It was just like it was awful. It was like, some kids were playing basketball while a bunch of people sat around and watched. There was no investment of energy from anybody, but Brunk brought some. And I think that that's important, and that's him being a leader.
Yeah, and leadership is another thing this team didn't have last year that I think Brunk, Trace Jackson Davis both bring to this. Because I think Trace Jackson Davis, when I look at him, I don't care if you're a freshman or a senior, you can be a leader. And I think this guy's a leader, and I think he is a quiet leader because when things get down to the nitty-gritty, he's going to step up and make a play for you.
And, I think the same thing about Franklin. I watched him play a lot when he was at Cathedral High School, and that's the kind of kid that he is. And he's a kid who will bring some noise, but I think as a freshman, he's kind of learning his way into that role. But I think you're right. I think with Brunk and with Trace Jackson Davis, you've got a couple of leaders. And if I were Devontae Green and Justin Smith, I'd be really upset. And I would up my game in kind of that avenue and make sure that these guys knew that I cared every bit as much as they did, but they just seem unwilling to do that. And despite the fact that Justin, I think, did play relatively well on the defensive end, man, offensively and just from an energy standpoint, in all other areas, I just scratch my head at that kid because he's got so much potential. I mean, he's got NBA ready almost everything, but between his ears, I don't even know if he likes the game. You know what I mean?
How about this? Because I've heard people say that Archie Miller's not that good of a coach, and I disagree with that. But I think that when you look at this, for some reason, Archie has not been able to get through to Justin or Devontae. I think he's got through to the rest of them. And I think that's the big glaring thing, though. When you're 5 players that play the most, 2 of those guys are not getting it yet. That's when you sit them and see if maybe that will get their attention.
Yeah, and I think that he does. And none of us is close enough to the program. We don't get to watch practice. Nobody does. And so we don't get to see it firsthand, what kind of accountability there is behind closed doors or in the gym when nobody's around. But what it looks like is Archie is working to appease these guys, and maybe appease is too strong a word, but not drive them away, maintain them as assets somehow. And I think it'd just be a whole lot easier for everybody if you say, you know what, we're moving on without you guys.
Yeah, because then you're going to get one of 2 things. They're just going to leave, or they're going to change what they do.
Right.
So.
Right. There's got to be that come to Jesus moment where you fish or cut bait, you know, and that I think that happens for everybody at some point, whether it's in business or whether it's in athletics or whatever. It's like, you know, what I'm doing is not working. That has been made obvious to me by somebody. And so we're going to, you know, I'm going to have to change the way I behave. Like for me, I am really, really impatient in meetings, right? I hate time wasting meetings. And the way I used to respond to that was, you know, not collaborative and not corroborative or, I wasn't very good in those meetings and I let people know it. And that's not the best way to deal with people. They get pissed off when you do that kind of stuff. So I've altered my behavior. These guys, they need to alter their behavior and figure it out, or they're going to have to go someplace else.
Yeah, because at some point you have to realize you're the problem. Because there's all kind of guys that I've had it before, cutting a player in an Arena Football League team. They come in and they're, why didn't you tell me I was doing things wrong? Well, I did. You just didn't answer. You know, you just stand there because a lot of people, no matter how many times you tell them what the problem is, they just won't get it because they refuse to ever think they're the problem until finally they're on the outside looking in, wondering what the hell happened.
Right. And that's what's going to happen to these guys. And that was, again, I mean, if we're doing a show, you got to bring up Bob Knight at least once. I mean, Bob Knight left no stone unturned in communicating to kids his displeasure with their level of effort and their level of execution. And in some cases went way too far in communicating that. But there's no kid that went through Indiana that didn't understand that the ball needs to be treasured and that on defense you got to be tougher. And so you had a situation where his teams generally got better over the course of the season, and we just haven't seen that yet at Indiana in a really long time.
Well, we're about to find that out over the next few weeks, though.
Yeah, we are.
Because I do think there's a chance that this team could be all right and win 22 games and make the tournament. I also think there's a chance this team could end up 500. So, I mean,
I don't think they're going to go through another stretch where they lose 12 or 13. I don't think that's going to happen. But, man, they need to get better. First of all, exactly what you said. They need to understand there's a problem, and then they need to correct that problem.
Yeah. And hopefully they do. But I know you want to get to that Butler-Purdue game. Cheer for Butler because we don't like Purdue.
We admire them, but we do not like them.
Hey, oops. Tell them where they can read your book. Oops. Where they can find
the book, Oops. And there's Race Thompson. How you doing, Race? Congratulations. Big win for the Hoosiers. His girlfriend looks at me. Race does not. Oops is it's a book that you can get. It's kind of mistakes. We're talking about mistakes and correcting mistakes and what you learn from mistakes, and that's what this book is. Just 37 chapters of me screwing up, making mistakes, what I learned from those mistakes. Some are funny, some are, they're all entertaining in one way or another. And you can get it at Amazon.com. The audiobook, which I voiced, you can get the ebook, you can get the hardcover book, all available at Amazon.com.
All right, Kent, and we will be back next Friday afternoon. Will you say 2 o'clock, Kent?
Yeah, that sounds great.
2 o'clock next Friday to preview the Indiana-Arkansas game next weekend. They're really breaking this up, only playing once a week. It's like covering an NFL team right now. That'll change shortly, though.
Yeah,
I want to remind everybody you can follow us on The Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth. You can also hear us on every podcasting platform known to man, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Zeno Radio. So for today, that's it. Indiana is now 11-1 with a 62-60 skin her teeth win over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So for Kent Sterling, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.